But when the robot uprising happens, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a single book review of We Have Always Been Here by Lin and Nguyen, which was from 2021, and it's a sci-fi horror, I guess, from Daw Publishing. So this is the January pick for the Interstellar Book Club, and I listened to the book on Audible. There are no spoilers in this review until the end when I tell you they're coming. We Have Always Been Here is a novel that has really awesome potential, but is brought down a bit by a somewhat unlikable main character, certain elements of the prose, and a lackluster twist. I don't like giving bad reviews, and this isn't a bad review. It's just, if I had to give this book stars, I'd give it 3 out of 5 stars. It was good, it's just there were things that I was kind of like, this could have been improved upon. So what's the story about? Misanthropic psychologist Dr. Grace Park is placed on the Deucalion, a survey ship headed to an icy planet in an unexplored galaxy. Her purpose is to observe the 13 human crew members aboard the ship, all specialists in their own fields, as they assess the colonization potential of the planet Eos. But frictions develop as Park befriends the androids of the ship, preferring their company over the baffling complexity of humans, while the rest of the crew treats them with suspicion and even outright hostility. Shortly after landing, the crew finds themselves trapped on the ship by a radiation storm, with no means of communication or escape until it passes. And that's when things begin to fall apart. Park's patients are falling prey to waking nightmares of helpless, tongueless insanity. The androids are behaving strangely. There are no windows aboard the ship, paranoia is closing in, and soon Park is forced to confront the fact that nothing, neither her crew, nor their mission, nor the mysterious Eos itself, is as it seems. Yeah, okay. I enjoyed the novel overall, as I said, but in truth, some things about it needed tightening. This is not a hard sci-fi, nor is it a horror. In fact, I was surprised when the book club said it was the latter because I didn't find anything scary about it at all. Unless it's supposed to be like an existential horror, versus like a shit your pants kind of horror, but I wouldn't consider this horror in any regard. The realism of the plot and the story is on the very thin side. For a novel that is very serious and isn't a space opera, where we can expect the science aspects to be backdrop more than backbone, there are a lot of scientifically inaccurate things in the novel, both big and small, including something called the comeback, which doesn't seem feasible given how climate change works, and the final revelation, which was borderline fantastical and what really kind of brought the story down for me. One thing that bugged me from the start is that it's unclear why the company ISF only sends one engineer on the mission. Given what happens in the plot later, this still isn't cleared up. You would think that they would send at least an apprentice or a backup engineer if there's only one person who is able to repair not only the robot staff, but the ship itself. Like, given the company or conglomerate or whatever they are is extremely powerful and well funded, there is no real rationale, and it bugged me the whole time. You need more than one engineer. Like, what if she was fixing something and fell and cracked her head open? You need a backup engineer to get people home. I don't understand. I also found that the main storyline on the Deucalion was not as interesting to me as a side story about these miners or Park's youth on Earth. In fact, I found my attention wavered quite heavily when it came to the Deucalion sections, even at the end. This was due to 2 things. 1, the mystery just isn't compelling and has a twist I saw coming a mile away. And 2, because Park is a little unlikable. Don't get me wrong. I love that this book has a woman in STEM main character who is also, misanthropic, but she's just annoying. She's always going on about how this isn't according to protocol. They shouldn't be doing this, and gasp, in a way that made her like this huge wet blanket. I was like, girl, get over yourself. I also wasn't sure if her personality was an attempt to make her neurodivergent. If it was not clear enough to me, and quite frankly, if it felt reductive, or if she was just supposed to be like antisocial. The other characters were potentially more interesting, though we don't get enough of any of them to get to know them. Despite something odd indeed happening on the Deucalion, Park comes across as paranoid and kind of pathetic. I'm also not sure how or why Park is a psychologist. It doesn't seem like she finds other people interesting. In fact, it seems like she's terrified of most people. And given her limited interaction with people on the ship, because she's like a loner who hangs out with androids, it seems like an odd career choice for me. In fact, another character directly addresses this question, like, why are you studying psychology? But we aren't even given an answer. She doesn't have an answer to it. And I'm just like, okay. The writing, I hate this kind of thing, but the writing was very much a debut. It was full of telling and not showing. I would have been quite drunk had I taken a shot every time I heard she felt or suddenly. I'm not sure why the editors didn't pick up on this. Honestly, this is why I have much higher expectations for traditionally published books. While you need to hire an editor, most self-publishers can't afford more than one because it's not cheap if you hire a good one. Publishing houses put books through at least 3, including a developmental edit usually. Why these issues with the writing weren't caught is beyond me, given this is a traditionally published book. The she felt and suddenly, they aren't terrible problems. I didn't hate the book because of this, but I didn't hate the book at all. I thought it was fine. And maybe I only noticed them due to it being an audiobook. That's possible too, but they are very prevalent. And I was like, enough that I made a note about it, obviously. Now, I will say this novel did have some great things going for it. If you're afraid of horror, which is fine, horror can be scary, this is a good book to ease yourself into it because it's not really scary at all. So that would be a benefit of reading this book if you aren't into horror. The sections with the miners, Taban and Daly, were really engrossing. Though why they were done via video transcript felt unnecessary. Though again, that might have been an audiobook thing. The audiobook was it wasn't annoying. It took an adjustment to get used to the style that it was done, because she would say person's name, then the person's name, then the dialogue, and there was barely any description. So that might have thrown me off a little bit. It probably would have been easier to read in the book itself. And the entire concept behind ISF, this company or conglomerate or whatever who controls everything in the future, and having conscripted versus non-conscripted employees was by far the most interesting thing about the novel. There's also a concept about robots and AIs that I'll get to in the end. I guess the thing is, there was just so much going on in this book. I think if it had cut out either the robots or the conscripted versus non-conscripted thing, it might have been better, because the one thing that really held the book back was that it was too damn long. And on top of all of these concepts, there's far too much wandering around in hallways in the dark, Park trying to understand people but clearly failing, and reiteration of topics that didn't need so much explanation. Again, it felt very debut. If it had some tightening and scientific fact-checking, it could have been fantastic. And you know what? Also, make it scary. The thing is with horror sci-fi is you can get away with you can get away with a bit more if it's scary, because that's what you're focused on, not so much the reality of the universe. And anyway, that's my opinion though on sci-fi horror. So yeah, honestly, I will say, as much as I'm critiquing it, it's not a bad book. I did enjoy listening to it. I was listening to this while we were going through COVID at my house. My husband, he got it before me, and so he would go to bed early a couple nights, and so I went downstairs and I played Minecraft and I listened to the book. If I didn't like the book, I wouldn't have done that. But upon reflection, it's not a book that I'll be buying in paperback. I didn't like it that much. I hope that it wasn't, I hope I wasn't too harsh, because I don't really like giving negative reviews, but listening to an audiobook is a commitment for me, so I have high expectations. Thanks for watching. Have you read this? Am I being too harsh about it? I don't know. Let me know. I'm going to jump into a spoiler talking about robots. So it's kind of a spoiler I guess it's a little bit of a spoiler for the book. Whatever. It's about robots. If you're not planning to read the book, then listen to this if you like robots, I guess. So Park's backstory in the novel deals with her love for this robot named Glenn, who was purchased for her as a companion errand boy, bought by her absent uncle. Park has no human friends, only Sally, her governess, bought when she was a child, and Glenn when she's a teenager. Park falls in love with Glenn, though really, she doesn't know any humans, so is it really love? I don't know. But her uncle separates them. Personally, I was like, yeah, girl, get out and find some humans, and usually I'm one to ship unorthodox relationships. So that, for me, that proves to me that this relationship was problematic. The difference is that if Park, as a grown adult, prefers to spend time with robots and not other people, or if she wants to have a physical relationship with a robot, so be it. No judgment from me, I understand. But given she was basically raised by robots, she was never given any other choice. Park, as a child and as a teenager, never learned how to deal with people. Having robot friends is far easier than having human friends, as you don't have to work on the relationship. They're just your friend. You don't have to do anything. Making friends is not easy. Most of the time, it's a lot of work, especially as an adult, to maintain relationships. And even my 4-year-old fights with her best friend all the time, and that's an important stage of development. Park has been denied this chance by her uncle's neglect and passing her off onto robots for her care. So it's her uncle's fault, basically. Yet the end of the novel seems to be trying to argue that we shouldn't fear robots. But I felt that this perspective was in opposition to what Park's backstory showed us. It's possible the novel is trying to say that controlling robots, and limiting their actions, not letting them make their own choices, is the bad thing. And maybe Glenn did love Park, but his programming prevented him from expressing it. But then again, if the fold was what gave robots sentience, they were different from the robots on Earth, who are just facsimiles of humans with very intense programming. So, to explain, while Glenn was an advanced AI, he was still just a programmed robot that learned to read his owner, Park's, cues for how she wanted him to act. She didn't love him, she loved her own reflection, because that felt safe to her, right? Truthfully, it would have been interesting if this book was against robots, and that relying too heavily on them would stultify us as a culture or something like that. I'm not saying I agree with that, but it just seems like most books today are all about how robots should have rights, and stuff like Sea of Rust is like the outlier. We did have Terminator, but that was like 30 years ago, and Terminator 2 changed its tune quite drastically. And subsequent films also, I think all of them, have a robot as a friend fighting the bad robots, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Arnold comes back in almost all of them as, like, spoiler alert, as like a good robot to fight off the bad ones. I'm trying to think. I watched T2 a billion times. I can't believe I didn't include that on my astounding sci-fi list. That movie was like a core part of my of my childhood. Sarah Connor was like my idol growing up. I just wanted to be Sarah Connor so bad. And then if you go and watch Terminator Dark Fate, the one that came out a couple years ago, I still want to be Sarah Connor. I want to be like 65 years old and, rocking a shotgun like that. Apparently they gave her like ass implants, or ass pants for the movie. I'm like, why? She's like 65. Leave her alone. But anyway, Terminator 2, I would say, though, is the best Terminator movie. You can fight me on that. Yeah. Anyway, truthfully, I don't think there will be a robot backlash. Already, most people don't go out of their way to harm NPCs in open-ended RPG video games, unless they're in a really bad mood. And, we all love robots like R2-D2 and BB-8, who aren't even human-like. So I think robots will be adapted into our society quite easily, in fact. But when the robot uprising happens, feel free to tell me I'm wrong, I guess. Thanks.